Hello and welcome to the Football 365 show. It's a big weekend on the Football 365 show, brought to you by Paddy Power. This is now our third or fourth live stream. I'm not sure what it is, but thank you for joining us. Always appreciated. It's me, Mark Smith. I'm here as ever with Sarah Winterburn. Lots to talk about. We'll talk about the game tonight. There's one playing at the minute, actually. Aston Villa and Everton, but there's also United Liverpool straight afterwards. We'll be out of your hair by the time that rolls around, and then plenty of stuff this weekend, FA Cup final, etc., etc. This is big weekend on the Football 365 show, brought to you by Paddy Power. Sarah Winterburn's here finally. Hello, Sarah.
Hello, Mark. You said finally as if I'm late, and for once I was in place 2 minutes before the broadcast.
I got to say like something. It's just words. Who cares? Just words. Now then, it's all finished, isn't it? The league's done. Man City have won. Nothing else to talk about, is there?
There's plenty to talk about. I think after that Chelsea defeat, it sort of becomes a little bit bizarre, isn't it? Chelsea losing to Arsenal means that the Champions League is in Liverpool's hands, which is utterly bizarre, considering the absolute shit show of a season that they've had, that they've got to the point where 4 games to go, they win every one. They're in the Champions League. Now it's you can ask yourself whether Liverpool are capable, or this version of Liverpool are capable of winning 4 in a row. This is a massive test, isn't it? But to get to that point where that's all in your hands, they couldn't have dreamt of this 2 months ago. You know, it felt a million miles away. Even 3 or 4 weeks ago, Jurgen Klopp was saying, we can't even dream about this. And now
this is it. So
they know 4 games, they're in it.
Yeah. It starts tonight. They're away at Manchester United. Straight after this show, they kick off. So you won't miss any of that. If you want to watch this and go on straight into that, that makes sense. It's all become interesting again in the league. We thought it was all done. Relegation's done, fine. Premier League champions done, fine. But there is now a race. And like you say, if Liverpool win this game, they're right back in it. 3 more to win, and there's a good chance they'll do that. There's a very good chance they'll do that, particularly as we've seen Leicester have got a tough last few games, plus distractions of the FA Cup final, more of which later on. Let's talk about the game tonight then. First of all, let's start with United, because there's been a lot of criticism this week from an insane point of view as far as I can see. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Are you not with Trevor Sinclair then in calling for a 6 points deduction?
Under any circumstance am I ever on Trevor Sinclair's side, I don't think. But this week, I don't understand it. I mean, I understand why he's getting headlines, because it seems to me to be a bonkers point of view. What do you want Solskjaer to do? But play his strongest 11 4 times in 8 days, or 3 times in 5 days? Where do you stand on this, Sarah? This is ridiculous, right?
It's ludicrous, yeah. I mean, he owed nothing to anybody. I mean, the only argument you could have, and a lot of people were having this argument on Wednesday morning, particularly on Football 365 on the mailbox, was that would Sir Alex have thrown it away when there was a chance? You know, there's a chance that they could have still won the title. You know, it was mathematically possible. So would he have gone and then seen if he could beat Leicester and then try and go again, just to put a bit of pressure on? Because 2 wins in a week would obviously have put pressure on City. It's a question. I don't think it's a valid question.
I can answer it. No, he wouldn't have done it. He would have not picked a first 11 to play 3 games of Premier League top level elite football in 5 days. He wouldn't have done it. The argument might be that he may have had a stronger squad and could have rotated with more, with more quality. But that's irrelevant, really.
I think the argument could have been.
Go on.
I think the argument could have been that Ole could have spread his first 11 over those 3 games. He didn't necessarily have to go full strength, second string, full strength. You know, there could have been a little bit more of management in there, I think. But Solskjaer's found it difficult to manage that squad all season. He's been very, very reluctant to give people a rest. You know, Bruno Fernandes, as we talked about the other week, running him into the ground, playing in that second leg against Roma, which was utterly ludicrous.
And
maybe if he hadn't done that. Oh, absolutely. There's several of them, you know, and Harry Maguire got injured in the end. It's hardly a surprise. He played every minute of the season up to then. So he's not managed his squad magnificently well. But on this occasion, no, you can't put it on him. I mean, what you can argue is that it was Man United fans who did that. You know, this is going to go on, isn't it? If this, presumably, if Liverpool don't make it into the top 4, there's always going to be that little niggle, isn't there, of like, oh, you know, remember when the Man United fans pull.
But this isn't how things work. Law doesn't work like this, does it? There might be a flashpoint that happens. How far down the line are you going to keep on blaming this flashpoint for? Are we going to say, all right, if next season, if Liverpool have missed out this time and next time, do we still blame? Let's get United 100 points docked because the fans broke into the stadium. You can't keep doing that.
Have you ever seen Steve Bruce moan about referees? Sometimes he moans about something that happened 2.5 minutes before the thing, for a foul throw 2.5 minutes before.
Yeah.
So, this is chaos theory. Anything, once something happens, there's a butterfly effect. Yeah. Anyway, it's nonsense. Of course it is. But Liverpool have got into this position now. Well, they haven't got themselves into it. They've kind of been pushed into it, placed into it. They've dropped a lot of points in recent weeks. It's not like they've earned this chance. They haven't earned this chance at all. Leicester stumbled. Chelsea stumbled this week. No one expected Chelsea to stumble against Arsenal. People thought that would be a parade. And I think it's a funny one with Thomas Tuchel, because when they said to him before the game, you've made 7 changes, he actually looked surprised. I don't think he'd worked it out. He'd kind of done, and then he almost saw it go across his face. Oh, actually, this might have been a mistake.
Though, Sarah. But that's the difference. So when we talk about Man City making 9 changes for the Chelsea game, which also affects Liverpool and the rest of the chasing pack for the top 4, when you see Chelsea make 7 changes, the manager doesn't even realise, because the quality of player in that squad is so good that they could all have a legitimate stake to starting. Whereas United, once they rest, not even 10, once they rest 5 or 6, you see the drop-off either in age and experience or in quality.
Yeah, massive drop-off. I said it before, Solskjaer is managing like it's Matt 1982. He's managing using 13, 14 players, like that famous Forest side or the famous Villa side who won the European Cup with using 13, 14 players. It's almost like he's back there, because there is a massive drop-off. He literally doesn't have a right back beyond Aaron Wan-Bissaka. You're dropping so far down. The drop from Luke Shaw is massive. The drop from Bruno Fernandes to Donny van de Beek, unfortunately, is massive. The only player in that team who you thought might play in a first choice side was Mason Greenwood. Who's obviously making a case to start for Man United at the moment, probably ahead of Marcus Rashford. But the problem with, as we've seen with these FA Cup games as well in the third round, you can get away with changing 3 or 4. But as soon as you change the whole team, you're basically playing. These players have literally never played on the same pitch together before. If you moved in 2 or 3 or 3 or 4, then everyone else has got the rhythm of it, haven't they? Because they've been playing that way all season.
Yeah.
You can't just put. It's like playing an all-star game or something. You just put 11 players on the pitch and expect them to play very well. And actually, the fact that they made a game of it is actually quite impressive.
Yeah, against a very good Leicester side, a full-strength Leicester side.
But a Leicester side, the pressure was massively on. They'd had that really poor result against Newcastle. Everybody was talking about, are they going to cock it up? That was the narrative, wasn't it? Before the Tuesday was, this is where Leicester were last season. This is what they threw away. If they throw it away again, how bad is that for Leicester? How bad is that for Brendan Rodgers? They had all that, and as soon as that Man United team is named, it's like a reverse psychology, isn't it? That well, we should win this.
There's expectation.
We're going to get so much stick if we don't beat this. If we don't beat this team, then really we have cocked it up. And I think that showed a little bit with that Leicester side. They did look a little bit nervous in that first half.
Yeah, I agree. So we'll talk about Liverpool now. But by the way, if you're watching this on your on Twitter or YouTube or Facebook, you can comment in. We do read out comments if they're clean and if they are worthy of reading out. Do get in touch with us. It will be in whatever message box you're looking at. Let's talk about Liverpool then very quickly. I don't know what to make of it. I mean, it feels like saying a top 4 finish would be a success this season. It feels like that's a mad thing to say, all things considered. But actually, that would be a pretty good result, I think.
I think you'd be naive and rather silly to think that expectations didn't shift over a season. In the same way that Leicester dropping to 5th would be a massive disappointment now, that it wouldn't have been at the start of the season. Liverpool finished 4th, considering where they were 2 or 3 months ago. You've got to say that's a triumph. And it will be spun like that as well, because they need to win these 4 games to do it. If they do win those 4 games, we're back to that mentality monsters thing, isn't it? That whole thing of, you can't keep this team down. We're back to that sort of narrative. And you'll kind of think, and then that sort of gives you that impetus in the next season. I talk a lot about momentum because it's very unusual that a team ends a season badly and starts the next one well. Really difficult to keep that going. And I know you might say there's a month in between, but it really does make a difference, I think.
I agree.
To take that positivity through to the next season. And if Liverpool do somehow win these 4 games and they do somehow get into the Champions League, not only will that be a massive boost for them in terms of attracting players, keeping players, and all the money stuff off the pitch, but it'll also give them that, this Liverpool side isn't finished. That's what the message is going to be if they win these 4 games.
Right, it brings us on to the next point perfectly. You're a real pro, Sarah. Man City, they are now officially champions of the Premier League. Can they be stopped next season? Now, this time last year, we were looking at Liverpool. We were thinking this could be one of those dynasty teams you read about. This could be 4, 5, 6 years in a row. But actually, Man City have just they've stepped it up again this season. Do you see this being the start of a dynasty for them, or do you think it's going to be more competitive in the years coming up?
I think we're fooling ourselves if we don't think we're already in a dynasty with Man City. They've won 3 and 4. That doesn't happen accidentally. That's the kind of domination that Man United managed in the 90s, that Liverpool managed in the 80s. Nobody wins 4 in a row. 3 out of 4 is domination. It's a dynasty, and they will start next season as favourites again. Now, the City side hasn't been phenomenal. It's been nowhere near the heights of the 100-point season. They're not that good. They're great. They're not astonishingly good. What they did was manage this season so much better than everybody else. Pep Guardiola changed the way he played in order to make this work. They've changed their focus a little bit, and it was and the way he's used his squad has been amazing. We talk about the Pep Guardiola Fantasy League bingo. You have no idea what team he's going to play. Nobody can predict that game to game, and that puts him in an incredibly strong position in terms of keeping those players fresh, but also flummoxing the opposition. How do you prepare to play Man City when you have no idea whether they're going to play a striker? Are they going to play fullbacks? Are they going to play fullbacks that are going to play as central midfielders? It's impossible to prepare for, and they've been phenomenal in that sense. Now, I think a lot is going to depend on what City do this summer. Are they going to spend that kind of money on a striker? Pep Guardiola has said that's not going to happen. He's not in the market for Erling Haaland. He's not in the market for Harry Kane. He's not in the market for anyone that good. To be honest, I don't think that City team needs anyone that good.
Doesn't feel like that position is necessarily a priority anyway. Their top scorer's got 12 goals this season, and
you could argue that Erling Haaland or Harry Kane would turn them into a team that would dominate Europe. But I don't think they need that kind of player. Of course they would make them better. Of course, if money was no object, they would buy those players. But all they really need
is no object. What are you on about?
Of course it is. We've seen Pep Guardiola. We've seen Man City in the way they spend money. It's very different to the way that Man United would spend money, or even Liverpool would spend money. They don't spend a massive amount on one player. Now you could argue all day that
50 million on each player.
Yeah, but they're not going to spend over. There's no way they're going to spend over 100 million on any player. Their club record edges up, edges. They're very, 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 very reluctant to play above sort of 75 million for anybody. So I don't think they need to. I think there are plenty of strikers out there who are better than Gabriel Jesus, and that's actually all they need.
Absolutely.
That little kick on in terms of who. They can be stopped. Of course they can, because Liverpool did it last season and Liverpool came damn close to it the season before. Yes, they can be challenged. They're probably challenged by Liverpool. I think this Liverpool side will come back stronger once they get those injured players back. I think.
Well, let's talk about this then. Let's
make
talk about
a massive difference.
What do the other teams need to compete? Let's start with Liverpool. So you need clean slate of injuries. That's an absolute. That's the first thing. That's the most important thing. Have that first team back together, particularly at centre back, right?
And obviously, the lesson learned is you get another centre half in as well, because they can't risk that. They went into last season knowing that they were in a little bit of a precarious position in terms of centre halves. Now they had the worst luck in the world with them, but they did make themselves a little bit vulnerable to that by not replacing Dejan Lovren Dejan Lovren when they did. God, I'm getting my Liverpool centre halves mixed up. But and then again, we're talking just about, and we're talking a centre forward. I think they actually need a centre forward probably more than anyone. And Roberto Firmino, for all the best will in the world, he has looked very poor this season.
Well, could this be a season where we see them actually with a bit of churn in that front three, because they've been together quite a while now?
I think there has to be. There's 3 of them who are sort of 27, 28, 29 by the end of next year. I know they're 28 until they turn 29, but they're all in that. They're all in that. It's not a mix-up, is it? They've got Diogo Jota, who's a younger player and he's done really well. A full season from him would make a massive difference. I think he's shown real promise. I'm not sure he's the step up that's the problem. I think they need players who are going to step in and step up. From we've had Sadio Mane having, in his own words, the worst season of his career, and yet he had to keep playing because there wasn't an alternative. And they do need more faces, more names in those areas. They've got a few players they can sell. They can raise a bit of funds. They're not going to spend a load of money. I think we know that about Liverpool now.
Do you think that's a general thing this summer, that no one's going to spend a huge amount of money?
Well, we saw it last season, and not a lot's changed since then. And actually, last summer they had some hope that fans were going to be back in the ground at some point this season. No one thought we were going to have a whole season of no fans. And so last summer there was very little spent. The only exception to that were Chelsea, who obviously operate at a very different level. They spend
and had the rollover money as well, didn't they?
Of course they did. And they may well go again, because I think what we're going to see and we move seamlessly on to Chelsea is obviously that, Roman Abramovich will be excited with what he's seeing with Chelsea. I know they've lost this week, but what Thomas Tuchel's done in a short period of time is exciting, because then you think, if you give him a full summer, if you give him a couple of players that he wants, so he's not walked in and playing with other another manager's players, to transform a set of players and a team in the way that he has done without any input in terms of any of his players,
his recruitment,
is astonishing. What he's done with that team is ludicrous, really. And he's turned them into what they should have been all along, which was a team that should have, after that outlay last summer, they should have been challenging for the title. They certainly should have been at least in the position of Man United, of being,
But what I'd say about
the closest
that,
challengers.
What I'd say about that is, and I completely agree with you, Tuchel's done an unbelievable job. But all those signings, all that money they spent last summer, it's difficult as a footballer. I imagine it's very difficult to move to another country, learn a new language, new culture, particularly when it's a pandemic. I'm not going to judge these players on this season. It's ridiculous. We've got Timo Werner there on the picture there. I mean,
what a great picture that is, by the way.
It's a great picture, yeah. I thought he was going to miss that, by the way. I'm not the only one who thought he was going to miss that. But I think he'll become even better next season. He'll be settled. He'll understand the Premier League a lot better. And look, they've got to a Champions League final and may well get top 4 and may well win the FA Cup. That'd be a phenomenal first season. It's been a good first season anyway. It could be phenomenal yet, and it could be a great foundation for them, those new players next season. I think Chelsea really could be the ones to watch next year. What sort of position do you look at them strengthening this summer to compete with Man City? I
think they probably need a couple of centre halves. I think Antonio Rudiger has been excellent in these last few weeks, but you see Kurt Zouma come in, massive drop in quality there.
Yeah.
As central midfield, they're probably okay. I think Kante's finding some phenomenal form, and barring the mistake on Tuesday night, which unfortunately Jorginho always does have a rick in him at some point, and a lot of us do. But I don't think there's a lot to be done there. I wouldn't be screaming for central midfielders for Chelsea. The obvious one is a striker. Now, I think this is a massive question, isn't it? Whether Chelsea go and spend big on a striker. I think they probably will, because I think even if Thomas Tuchel's not, Thomas Tuchel may well be arguing he's all right. Timo Werner will get better, like you say. We've seen parts of Kai Havertz when he's played as a 9 looks really good, because his movement is great, and he's tall, and he's much stronger than he looks.
Yeah.
Much stronger than he looks. He like we've said before, he looks very languid. He's not languid. He might argue he's all right, actually, but I think Roman Abramovich will see that team and think, there's something to be done here. There's a title to be won, and the only way they can do that, possibly in his eyes, will be go out and spend a lot of money on a striker. And I think they want someone like Erling Haaland. They're probably the only ones in the Premier League who will pay for Erling Haaland. Now, whether Erling Haaland would join Chelsea is another question. He tellingly weren't mentioned on the list of possible clubs that he would fancy. And I think eventually he will go. Now, I think they're trying to smoke out Real Madrid or Barcelona. I think there's no doubt about that. And I don't think he.
So who are the names do you think then? So Barcelona, Real, Liverpool, Derby, and what, Man City?
I think yeah, he did mention Derby. He's got a lot of time for Derby. I think Mino Raiola is trying to smoke out the Spanish clubs. I think he did that little tour in front of the world's cameras, trying to get them to put some money forward. He's even said he thinks Real Madrid can afford Haaland. And Real Madrid usually do find the money, and I think that's where he does want to go. So I don't think so. Chelsea obviously, but I think there are other players. He talked about Lukaku, which would be astonishing, wouldn't it, if he went back to Chelsea and actually got the chance he never got under Jose Mourinho. and he could be brilliant in that side. That's such a wonderful array of attacking midfielders. And we saw the other night, you kind of forget because you don't see them, that Hakim Ziyech and the way he sort of whips that ball across, absolutely phenomenal. When he has time to put his foot on the ball and he whips that ball across, I don't think there's many who are better at that. And I think if you had a mobile but effective target man, so what we saw is Olivier Giroud is he can finish, but he doesn't move an awful lot. Kai Havertz and Timo Werner don't have the finishing ability of Giroud, but they're more mobile. If you get that in one player, I think this Chelsea side could be brilliant. And like I said, I'm not saying that they need that striker, but I think they will do, because I think there's going to be a show of a display of largesse from Roman Abramovich this summer, because I think he's going to go for it. I think they're going to go for it.
So we think that Liverpool may well challenge again. We think Chelsea may well challenge. Is that it for challenges to Man City, or do you see United in that group?
I don't see Man United in that group. I think there's a ceiling for them, and unfortunately, it's a ceiling that I think with Solskjaer there's a ceiling. I think there's only so much they're going to achieve with him. I think they've done really well, and I think if they finish second as they probably will, and they win the Europa League, you've got to say that's a good season.
Good season, yeah.
If they lose in that Europa League final, I think it's as ridiculous as that in football that. Like that, it's not a good season, because if
margins, that's what the margins are, though, isn't it? They know this.
If you the minute they dropped into the Europa League, they were the favourites to win the Europa League, because they were the biggest team in it. If they don't win it now, and if they don't beat Villarreal, I'm afraid it's been a bust of a season. I just don't think there's enough. I don't think there's another level for them. They've done so well since Bruno Fernandes came in, but I don't get the idea there's another gear. And I think you need another gear, because they're. Are
you saying that that's because of Solskjaer or because of the squad? I
think part of that is because of Solskjaer. I think tactically he's not brilliant, and I think it's really difficult to win the Premier League title without being tactically brilliant. I mean, Claudio Ranieri managed it, but that was a very special season. But generally, you've got Antonio Conte, the way that he won it with Chelsea, very tactically minded. We've seen other managers do that, just in the same way that you looked at that Chelsea squad last season and thought this could be a title challenging squad, but they don't have a title challenging manager. I think Man United are in the same boat. Unfortunately, I think he's done brilliantly to take them where he is. I think they're going to have to go again to get to the next level.
Yeah. Okay, so. We've sort of done the Premier League there, I think, for next season as well. So you can take the next year off. Let's move on, though, to the FA Cup final, because believe it or not, that's happening this weekend. Chelsea, again, we sort of covered them in quite a lot of detail. What chance do you give Leicester here? We've actually had a comment about Leicester. Where are we? Owen Mac Rag. No, I don't know what that is. Is it Owen or Ian? Owen. You tell me, Sarah. How do you say that name?
I think it's just a cough. It's like, I don't know.
He says, great show so far, guys. As always, not sure I agree with you there, Owen, Ian. I'd love to hear an opinion on Vardy's season. 2 goals in his last 16 games. Are we finally seeing his decline? Is this the decline of Jamie Vardy? Surely not. Sarah Winterburn.
What I can say about Vardy, he's a massively spurty striker. He's either scoring goals upon goals, or he's not scoring anything at all. And I think we're probably in the longest sort of, I don't want to say goal drought, but we're in the longest period of, and as he gets older, you're always going to think, is this the one that finishes? I don't know how many Red Bull Skittle vodkas can a man down and keep that kind of pace. But luckily for Leicester, we've seen Kalichi and Iheanacho really step up, and Brendan Rodgers, who really has managed incredibly well this season despite a massive load of injuries. He's found different ways to play with that Leicester side, and we saw Vardy going from being very much on the last man, constantly looking for that, to him almost dropping back a little bit and playing a very different role, and letting Iheanacho, make a nuisance of himself.
Iheanacho, is that what you're going with? Iheanacho.
Kalichi.
I go with Iheanacho.
Iheanacho. I mean,
What do you know?
You can't even say this fella's name.
Oh, sorry. Breaking news. It's Owen, the Irish spelling. Close enough, though. Hee hee. That wasn't supposed to be an Irish. That wasn't supposed to be a. Oh God.
Did you just try to do a little leprechaun?
No, I didn't. I literally didn't try and do that. That's he wrote it and I just read it wrong. Move on, for God's sake. Move on. Have Leicester got a chance here though against Chelsea?
I absolutely do have a chance, yeah, and absolutely no doubt about it. You look at the league table; they're very, very close in terms of points. Obviously, Chelsea's form since Thomas Tuchel is slightly different to Leicester's form under Brendan Rodgers, but I think there is more than a chance there. They choked a little bit in the Carabao Cup semi-final though, and and they had the easier option, the easier semi, and they choked a little bit. Didn't really turn up in that game. And obviously after last season, there's kind of that, do they have the for want of a better word, bollocks to get over the line with things?
We are live.
We've not seen that from this version of Leicester yet, have we? To see.
No.
Can they go the next bit to sort of finish the job?
But is that not partly to do with the physical demands on what is relatively a smaller squad? I mean, we said this about United earlier on. Leicester haven't got a bigger squad, and they're playing as many games. Well, maybe not this season, but they're playing a lot of games at the business end of the season against teams with bigger squads.
Oh God, yeah. So it's quite obviously about the fatigue, and they have had a massive roll of injuries. Like you said, Johnny Evans being out has massively impacted on them. They don't have, as good as Kagla-Soyuncu's been over the last couple of seasons. Him and Johnny Evans is the key. The combination of the nous and the pace and the physicality and the intelligence. That really works for them. You take one of them out, and they drop down quite considerably. Obviously, they've lost James Justin. They had Ricardo Pereira out for a very long time. James Maddison's been in and out. That central midfield, though, to me, Wilfred Ndidi, Yuri Tielemans, as good as it gets.
It's one of my favourites. Unbelievable.
Yeah. What an axis that is, and that pair have stayed fit for most of the season. Ndidi lost a little bit earlier in the season. Leicester looked a different team without him. It's a big drop to Nampalys Mendy from Wilfred Ndidi, but that. Ndidi and Tielemans can make a real nuisance of themselves in that Chelsea midfield. They probably will match up formation-wise. I'm not predicting this is going to be a phenomenal game. I think it might be quite cagey. I can't see this being goals. But we got
two. It could do with the Leicester goal early, couldn't it?
It really could, to sort of force Chelsea out a little bit, and because otherwise Chelsea will quite happily sit in a bit of a, in their sort of formation. What the hell is she talking about? And go, and like I said last week, when they go quick, and that's the idea. But Leicester want to play the same way, so they could well sort of just go on.
Could well just.
You look like you're going to say something. Go on.
What I was going to say is,
you went all like.
Yeah. Well, I'm a big FA Cup fan. Always have been. Maybe always will be. But I wonder, what's bigger for these clubs? Is it winning the FA Cup or is it top four? Because this is the thing. It has to be now, doesn't it? It's a bit sad to say that, but it has to be.
I think we've gone way past the point where we can talk about whether that's sad or not. I think this is that boat sailed a long time ago. Unfortunately, if you're Thomas Tuchel and you're talking to Marina Garevskaya this week, she's not saying, "Oh God, I really hope we win the FA Cup." She's saying we need to get in that top four because we need. Obviously, they've got another route through the Champions League itself to finish in the Champions League. But a club like Chelsea, we're talking about them trying to attract players like Erling Haaland, like Romelu Lukaku, anyone of that ilk. They can't not be in the Champions League. No one joins Chelsea because they've just won the FA Cup. They're nice to have. It's a great thing to have. And for Leicester, it would be great because they've not even been in an FA Cup final for donkeys. And it will be something tangible at the end of the season. Even if they don't finish in the top four, they'll have something tangible. But there's no doubt, absolutely no doubt that finishing in the top four is the priority.
Yeah. So Thomas Tuchel only been there a few months, really, and it looks like we certainly got the potential to have a pretty unprecedented first few months in English football. Can you think of a manager with more of an impact in such a short space of time? Because this, to me, just seems crazy. I mean, yes, fine, the squad he inherited is packed with quality. But like you said earlier, he didn't recruit any of those guys. There was no guarantee these were Tuchel-type players. So what he's done here, for me, is just been... Yeah, I was thinking earlier, and I can't think of anyone that did it in such a short space of time. And I'm just very impressed, Sarah.
A mid-season appointment, it's very unusual for a mid-season appointment to make. You talk about that new manager bounce. But this is different. This is changing the whole ethos of the way that they play, and also the way that he's changed their confidence is absolutely massive. Because you're talking about a team that their record up to that point, 6 wins, 5 draws, 2 defeats. Their record up to that point is absolutely massive. And for Leicester, it would be great because obviously they've got another route through the Champions League itself to finish in the Champions League. But a club like Chelsea, we're talking about a team that with their record up to that point, of the last sort of 3 months before he took over was terrible. It was lower mid-table form. It wasn't, it was not like it's not like the days when Chelsea would, sacking managers when they were third or fourth, back in the Andrew Villas-Boas days. This is a Chelsea team that was looking really, really poor, and he's pulled them off their knees. It's almost like, the sort of job that we were used to seeing from a sort of Sam Allardyce at a lower club, that kind of somehow making them really difficult to beat, making it all about that discipline in the first instance. But also, you can't just do that, not at that level. It's fine if you're trying to stay up, you can just make yourselves difficult to beat and keep the other team out and then see what happens. But not only has he done that, but changed the way that they attack. Now, under Frank Lampard, they were attacking in a very haphazard way, and they were leaving gaps because it was almost like they were playing on instinct. But there's clearly method to how they're playing. And to do that in short space of time, and in a season that we've had where games are coming every 3 days, unless you're Man United and they're coming every 4 hours, then to do that because then he's not even got days on the training ground, never mind weeks or months. So he's having to change it on the hop. He might have one day and then he's got to play another game. So it's been really, really impressive, and it makes me excited for next season, because obviously what we all want as neutrals, or as Premier League neutrals anyway, is a race.
We want a race.
Ideally, we want 3 or 4 teams in that race, and we really could get that. We really could get that.
Just imagine that, though. I've not seen that for ages. Ages and ages. Oh, so sexy. Right, we've done the teams at the top of the table. That's the glamour stuff done. Let's get into the meat of the matter. The relegated teams. It's all happened. All 3 teams have gone down. It's all finished.
They've gone. Ta-ra.
Straight back up.
Sorry,
I lost you a bit there. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Go again.
The 3 teams have gone. How likely is it that we'll see them coming back pretty shortly? I mean, first of all, let's start with West Brom. Do you see them retaining Sam Allardyce? Do you see them coming straight back up?
I think I could probably put Fulham and West Brom together in that. I think there's a very good chance that they could strike back up. They've both very, very familiar with what it takes to get back out of the Championship. They've both done it several times. Both you could categorise as yo-yo clubs over the last few years. They absolutely know as a club, as a lot of them as players, that a lot of those players are the same players that came up from the Championship in the same way that Norwich were. If you keep most of that team together, in both cases, I mean, Fulham is slightly different because they've got so many lone players, but they've got players in there like Harrison Reed and Bobby Dakova-Reed who will still look good in the Championship, and I can see them coming back up. I think if they keep Scott Parker as well, I think there's little doubt they could come back up.
Well, it's like you said earlier about momentum, isn't it? Yeah. Finishing the season strongly now is such a huge advantage. I know you've got a long summer. I know you've got the Euros sandwich in it, but if you get some good momentum going to the summer, players on a high, it's so much easier to get back in training, back in pre-season, starting the season well. And the Championship is brutal, so getting a good start is huge.
Which is why I massively worry about Sheffield United, because I think this season has been, for want of a better word, traumatic for them. It's been, to never get going. I know, we both support teams who've done this in the Premier League in the last 20 years, of just having a season where you never remotely look like you're going to stay up. Like you just kind of, all you're trying to do is get to 10 points. You're just getting those points together. And both your team and my team then have an you can't, there's no bouncing back from that.
But the difference is, though, this is worse, because the difference is our teams, Derby and Huddersfield, expected that to a certain extent. Sheffield United, they didn't see this coming. I don't think anyone saw this coming. I certainly didn't have them in my bottom 3 at the start of the season. I did after about 8 games.
They never escaped from it after that, did they? I think sensibly, if we'd have looked at that, we would have predicted it, because we want to talk about momentum. They ended last season horrendously. Yep. As soon as there was that break for COVID, the way that they came back it worked against them massively. They came back a different side. And they ended the season so badly. They stumbled and fell down the table. We really probably, if we'd have thought about it, would have thought they would have been in trouble. But they spent money. We all thought Ryan Brewster would work in that team. Absolutely. We thought the one thing that Sheffield United were missing were a goal scorer. They got the goal scorer. They didn't get the goals. I really fear for them next season. That I wouldn't I wouldn't bet against them dropping again. I just think it's so easy for that to happen, that you do the double drop because you have a miserable season. And it's so easy to get caught again because you don't have that positivity. Half your team don't remember winning a game. That's, that is, I remember when Huddersfield went down, you'd start looking at that squad and going, some of these players have won 2 games in a year. You just think, how are you possibly going to go again after that? Because there's no residual great feeling. And they've also sacked Chris Wilder, who was probably their best chance of coming back up again. I know why they did it, but and there's obviously things happening behind the scenes there, and with money and backing and what have you. And his signings weren't good. They weren't. He wasn't. He didn't make a good job of spending the money he was given. So you can see why the club didn't want to give him money again. But he probably was their best chance of coming back up. Now, what their next appointment is going to be massive. But I certainly wouldn't have them anywhere near my favourites to go up from the Championship next season.
No, I worry for them, but not to the same extent as you. I think if they can keep the nucleus of their side together, I mean, they're probably going to lose Sander Berge. But I think that, COVID helps with this a little bit because teams haven't got any money to spend. But also, there's just not that many outstanding players there that anyone wants to pick up anyway.
Well, they're a system team.
Might be okay.
Even at the end of last season, even when they'd had that great season, you didn't think anyone was going to get poached because they're a system team. There's nothing in that side that screamed like this is the player that makes it work. Nobody was going, oh my God, how much will they take for Oliver Norwood, or what will they have for Ollie McBurney? It was like that team was going to stay together, and the majority of it will stay together again. It's now whether they've got enough oomph in them and whether there's, they've suffered enough out of this season to go again. And I'm boring the hell out of myself with the momentum stuff, but it is massive. And they are going into this summer with no momentum whatsoever. They've had a traumatic season, and I do fear I'd be amazed if they even finish top half next season.
Well, just to interrupt your very boring momentum chat, breaking news, Jack Grealish is back on a football pitch again at last. He's on for Aston Villa at home to Everton. They are 0-0, 12 minutes left of that game. Grealish is back, Sarah, so obviously I'll be having a party tonight, as he is my favourite player in the world. I think that's all we've got time for tonight, Sarah. Let's let people get off, get a cup of tea, get what they got to do, get ready for the United-Liverpool game. We'll be back same time, same place next week. It's always Thursday nights at 7 o'clock, normally before an 8 o'clock kickoff.
Thursday night Sarah, is party night.
Thursday night absolutely is right. It is party night. I hope you've enjoyed it, Sarah. Enjoyed having you on, as we always do. Thank you guys at home for watching or listening, whatever you're doing. Thanks for the guys for commenting. Sorry, Owen, for getting your name wrong. We'll be back same time, same place next week. This has been Big Weekend on the Football 365 show, brought to you by Paddy Power.